And I now call upon Vinu to continue the proposition case.
Now, on Team Canada today, we're a bit confused because we don't know what New Zealand is arguing for or against. We don't know if they're arguing for compensation based on need, or no compensation at all because it breeds resentment, or whether or not we should be helping people based on whether or not they had injustices, and somehow these injustices are now nullified because they've worked their way into a better position. On Team Canada today, we're going to show you why Team New Zealand has fundamentally misunderstood the nature of justice, why Team New Zealand has misunderstood the nature of past wrongs, and why, as a result, Team New Zealand will not carry this debate. So let's look at the three main themes this debate comes down to. Firstly, it's the idea of combating problems. Secondly, it's this idea of culpability. And thirdly, it's the idea of fair compensation itself. Now let's get into each one of those in turn. Now, under this idea of combating problems, we saw the first speaker from Team New Zealand present their team line that we seek to target inequality. We would compensate based on need, but we would not compensate based solely on past injustices. We take exception to this on three levels. Firstly, we would say that it's not mutually exclusive to compensate based on need and compensate based on injustices, and they never once proved to us why this was true. Secondly, we would say it's the principle of compensation we seek to uphold, that just because there are other people who deserve this aid doesn't mean that the people who have wrong lose their right to it. And thirdly, we would say, on a practical level, often these people that we're giving aid to have the need for it as well. Now, what we've seen from Team New Zealand is a very incorrect analysis of what need is. Because what we've told you on Team Canada is it's not just their current need, it's the lost opportunity they had from the fact that they weren't able to develop at the same rate of others because of these injustices committed against them. So because it's not just financial need right now, but very tangible lost opportunity, we believe that need still stands, and as a result, compensation must be paid. But then this second speaker on Team New Zealand started to change this a bit. She talked about blank checks and said that blank checks wouldn't solve problems, unless apparently these blank checks are based on need, which is also something we'd say they support. Now, firstly, we would say we're not giving them blank checks. We said very clearly this is development aid, and apparently, according to CvN New Zealand, this isn't compensation, despite the fact that it was these countries' development that was harmed by us going in there and harming their citizens. Secondly, what we'd say is that when you bring up this idea that blank checks aren't worth it, you can't argue simultaneously for blank checks being okay based on need, and we'd like New Zealand to clear that up in their next speech. So finally, this second speaker on Team New Zealand talked about the general populace not supporting other programs which could address inequality based on need, which is really an assertion that she spent 30 seconds on. In any case, what we'd say is that we disagree. Often the guilt that remains within these populations for these injustices is a powerful motivator to get other things done as well, in addition to compensation. They haven't really proved to us why a person who supports compensation will no longer support other programs as well. So let's look into the second theme of this debate, this idea of culpability. Now, Team New Zealand stood up and very strongly planted their flag and said that only the perpetrator should be punished for a crime. And we take an exception to this on three levels as well. What we've shown to you, I'll take in a second, sir, is that the perpetrator's action has benefited all. And when it has benefited all, everyone should have to pay back. What we'd also say is that it's this idea of inheritance, ladies and gentlemen. When you inherit the wealth that came from these perpetrators' crime, you should also inherit the responsibility that comes from these actions as well. And thirdly, what we'd say to the throwaway point on immigrants who have newly joined the state, they aren't understanding how a taxing society works. The fact is, when you're in a society that taxes, you have to pay into stuff that you weren't a part of, and still get benefits from. So what we'd say is, on those three levels, their idea that only the perpetrator should be punished, false. Yes?
You would agree that if the German government gives aid to Israel, it necessarily cannot give that aid to poorer countries in Africa who need it more?
Absolutely not. That's exactly what we're disagreeing with. All you've done is restate this assumption that it's mutually exclusive. We can say Germany can give aid to Israel and can give aid to its African colonies as well. And they haven't proven us to us there that it's actually different, just somehow that it's a finite number. What we'd say, ladies and gentlemen, is not saying you pour all your aid money to compensating your past injustices or your former colonies. They've misunderstood that dichotomy. So finally, we have this idea from the second speaker that the state is just a construct of people. What we would say is that construct was built on injustices, that construct was built on these wrongs, and as a result, that construct, whether or not it's a construct of people or a physical, tangible thing, needs to pay back. They said that we all had injustices against us, ladies and gentlemen. We can't possibly pay them all back. Let's examine that logic. Because the state can't pay everyone back, it necessarily must pay no one back. We don't agree with that on this side of the House, ladies and gentlemen. We would say that the nature of these past wrongs is so wide-reaching and so grievous that we can't pay everyone back. We agree with that, but that doesn't mean we do everything in our power right now to fix the wrongs we have committed. And Team New Zealand hasn't been willing to engage with us on that point. So, what we've seen then in the final theme of this debate, this idea of compensation, is once again Team New Zealand misunderstanding justice itself. So really what they've hinged their entire case on so far is that this idea of natural compensation holds. This idea that somehow these people right now don't have a demonstrated need, therefore they shouldn't get money. This is a very warped concept of justice, ladies and gentlemen. We would say a wrong is a wrong, regardless of when the crime occurred and what the situation of the wrong is right now. Yes.
I think giving ethnic Malays compensation has helped their acceptance within society.
Okay, alright, so now again, going back to this one example where compensation might not have been given out in the best way. We don't feel in any way that precludes this policy of giving compensation to injustices, so we don't see where that really stands. So getting back to this idea of natural compensation, which interestingly New Zealand had no response to today on their side of the House, we would say that it doesn't matter if after you've committed a crime, that the victim is skilled enough or lucky enough to get back on their feet. A crime has occurred, ladies and gentlemen, and justice must be paid to them, regardless of whether naturally they've been able to go back to a good situation in their life. Now, they brought this idea of, again, resentment under the idea of compensation, saying that it breeds more compensation. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, we disagree with this on two levels. Firstly, we say that the people who actually are going to feel angered by this are often the people who've committed these injustices or profited from these injustices in the first place. And we don't really care, ladies and gentlemen, if they're going to feel resentful. What we care about is the fact that these ethnic minorities or people who have been wronged aren't getting their rightful compensation. Secondly, what we say is even under their bill of compensating based on need, that problem of resentment isn't solved if you're just giving it to people who are, say, poor. So firstly, because they just propose something that's factually incorrect, and secondly, because their own bill continues that problem, even if it were true, we believe that point still falls on Team Canada. So, what have we heard so far, ladies and gentlemen, from Team Canada with regards to these three main questions? We brought this idea that liability exists, that liability doesn't change just because times happen. We brought to you this idea that we can't let justice die with those who have broken it. And from Team New Zealand, we haven't heard substantive responses. We've talked to you about culpability, ladies and gentlemen. We've talked to you that even though they state is a construct of people, those people have benefited from the wrongs of the past, and even if they haven't, the nature of a taxation, a society where taxation is that you pay into things which didn't necessarily have anything to do with you. We've talked to you about combating problems, saying that there's a clear link between giving these countries aid and benefiting them. And even if you would Team New Zealand's line that it isn't, we would still rest on the principle that because it's a wrong that has occurred, this compensation must still be given. And thirdly, we've proven to you that it creates a precedent for accountability for future generations, something Team New Zealand had nothing to say about. So because today Team New Zealand has misunderstood the nature of need of these people, that there is a very tangible lost opportunity that occurs, because Team New Zealand has misunderstood that just because a crime has occurred and the victim is now back on his feet, that no compensation should be given. Because Team New Zealand doesn't understand the fact that historical injustices will continue to be injustices, no matter how far away we are removed from them, we beg to propose.